I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. Hello, everyone. Not a lot to report on my personal life this past weekend. I did work a wedding, which my first internship in event planning was weddings back in college. So it was fun to kind of dust off those old skills. It's hard. There's so much pressure with weddings. It's so different from corporate because if dessert is late or something's wrong, it's like their big moment. And with corporate, it's like, okay, that's a bummer, but we have another sales meeting next year. So it was really fun. It was part of a trade deal because my old colleague, Jordan, she worked my anniversary party. So I told her I'd work a wedding for her and her wedding company. Shout out to Jordan Hilbert. This episode is sponsored by Formidable. It is a media company founded by Emily Parker. She's been on the podcast a couple times and my former boss. She was in media for over 20 years and she started this company because she wanted to have news through a women's lens. So you can sign up at beformidable.com where you can get daily newsletters of news that would be interesting through a women's lens. Additionally, if you are wanting to do a newsletter, she has this white label newsletter part of her business. So if your business wants to do any kind of newsletter, she has a team of journalists and writers that can put that together for you and brand it from your company. So again, beformidable.com, check them out. And thank you again for them for sponsoring this episode. The other shout out I want to give is to the Inn at the Whack. That is where I'm at right now with my guest. And I want to give a shout out to Noura, Director of Hotel Sales. She hooked us up with this beautiful suite. I love it. And a little bit about the Inn at the Whack, if you're not familiar. It's a boutique hotel experience with a private club. There's 109 guest rooms with city and water views, 16 meeting rooms, and a golf simulator. I actually was here yesterday doing a team outing. I did the golf simulator. It was quite fun. There's 5 floors of fitness facilities, including a 25-yard lap pool, a spa, a barbershop. There's places for dinner and drinks and dining. There's just anything you ever could want is here at the Whack. So definitely look into that. And again, Noura, and I'll put some information in my show notes if you'd like to contact them. So thank you for hosting us. And with that, it's time to introduce my guest, Stephiney Foley, founder and CEO of Yuzi Care. Hello.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So I met you at my anniversary party. You were Emily's guest, actually. So yeah. I remember I was chatting with people briefly, but you were the talk of the town because everyone was like, have you met Stephiney? Her company's so cool.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think, we just try to do the best we can and hope that the world hears us.
I love it. Well, we're going to have a lot of time to talk about Yuzi Care and how it came to be. But I wanted to give a little background about you. You are a certified doula, an Army veteran. You went to West Point and graduate school at Stanford and MBA at Dartmouth. You've spent a decade in tech and a decade in military. Some tech companies include Tesla, Amazon, an NFT startup that you co-founded. You're an angel investor. You're on the board of Athena Angels, an angel investing company. And I added this in here, even though it's not business related, but you were a black belt judo and advanced scuba diver, right?
Yeah, you did you did your due diligence and research.
Well, I was trying to give every new thing I learned about you. I was just more and more impressed. So this is just so cool to have you on here. And 2 years ago, you started this company with a mission to build the world's largest maternal care platform. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to give a little bit more of a pitch of what Yuzi Care does.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think all of those jobs and hobbies just kind of shows that I may or may not have ADHD. We're building the infrastructure for modern postpartum care, combining AI-powered software, tech-enabled services, and a community to really bridge that critical gap that families face after birth.
I love it.
Thank you.
So usually I would kind of talk to you a little bit more about your business and then go into the news articles, but I chose an article that was actually just recently published about you. So we're going to dive into it there. So the 4 articles we're going to be covering is an Amazon leader and Army vet launches a Seattle wellness startup. Hint, it's you. 2, what cuts to research might mean for all of us. 3, Mark Cuban backs a Seattle startup. And lastly, we're going to talk about 2 big alliances that have formed between Fifth Avenue Theater and STG, as well as Pacific Science Center and Seattle Center. So let's get into it. The first one is all about you, like I said. It was a cool article on GeekWire that kind of explored where you'd come from and why you started it. So I guess in your own words, how did this company come to be?
Yeah, I think I want to back up and talk about our vision.
Sure.
Too, our vision is really bold, and I'll share a little bit about why we started it. I mean, it's very deeply personal. Our vision is like a world where no families have to navigate the postpartum and parenthood journey alone. And every parent gets the care that they deserve. We're here to build a new standard because postpartum deserves as much attention as pregnancy, fertility, and in the women's health space. And women should be able to thrive after birth, and postpartum care should be a right instead of a privilege. So I started Yuzi Care with my own story. After giving birth, I actually experienced postpartum depression, and I didn't know about it. I did so much research beforehand. I read all the books, watched movies, talked to friends, and I thought I had all the resources. But when that baby came, I was so unprepared and I felt very unseen. And, it was like almost immediately everybody went to the baby. Right? Which rightfully so, beautiful. I even myself went to the baby. Yeah. Right? But the mother is often forgotten, and I was struggling in so many different ways, and I know so many people do struggle like this, and how many people actually suffer in silence without knowing it. In countries like China, Korea, Japan, they go to these postpartum retreats for 30, 60 days after they give birth. And even in Denmark, they have this concept called Kromsorg, where they send a nurse to your house and the government pays for it. Wow. Just to check up on you, cook food, and just different things to and we call that wraparound care to support you. In the US, we send you home with a baby and, a single 6-week checkup afterwards. And that's it, and a good luck, see you later.
Weren't you saying at the party that there's 15, 16 appointments before you're pregnant and then there's one afterwards, right?
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
Crazy.
And interestingly enough, we have a chief medical officer. She's a board certified OBGYN, and we talk about this all the time. Dr. Ashley Hedge, and we say that there's not necessarily that much training on postpartum, even in the OB/GYN curriculum. Correct me if I'm wrong out there. I would love to hear from other OBs out there. Sure. But I think there's just a gap in education, resources, training, and understanding that it is a sacred period, and every other culture has it except for ours.
It's so true. So talk to me about, you were at Amazon, you were pretty high up at Amazon, and then you go through childbirth and you feel that there's this need. How did you know it was time to leave that Amazon and start this company? And what did you do to prepare? I know you got certified, and I think you went to Bastyr. Is that right?
Yeah, University? I went to Bastyr University. I wouldn't say I was high up at Amazon. No one is high up unless you're Jeff Bezos or Andy Jassy. Sure. I think it was a problem that was keeping me awake at night. And I remember talking to a mentor of mine, and we talked about, hey, what if you didn't do this? What happens, right? And I just I zoomed into the future, and I was thinking, okay, when I'm 70 years old and I look back, will I have any regrets on not doing it? And the answer was yes. And it was gnawing at me. And I was probably the least likely person that should have started a company, right? Because I was the sole breadwinner at the time. We live in Seattle, which is expensive. Yep. We had a high mortgage rate. We have 2 kiddos that were still in daycare. So, it's not like you get BOGO, like you don't get buy one, get one free at daycare. Yeah. You have to pay for both daycares, right? And it was really hard because to leave that stable corporate career, but for me, it was a calling. I couldn't not stop about the problem. I was obsessed with looking at, who are the competitors? Who is actually doing this? Who did it in some flavor like care.com? And why didn't they chase after this problem? And so everyone I talked to, I pitched. I was pitching janitors at Amazon. Anybody who would listen, I would say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And so, and it's funny because I had friends that came back to me that were like, oh, you're actually doing it. And I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people that have a lot of good ideas and don't actualize them and put them into place. Yeah. So specifically, you mentioned you have a little bit of a retreat side of your business, which I know you'll talk about a little bit more, but it's a website where if you just had a kid, you can go there and find all sorts of care. It's sort of like a database, or is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I would call us a community and a platform, right?
Okay.
So we're obviously leveraging AI to allow us to create these personalized care plans, additionally, we are also using AI to create these AI agents to kind of do the scheduling, the responses, and to provide that like really concierge level experience that customers want. And there's like a lot of nitty gritties,
Sure.
right? So I think my business kind of went through a couple of iterations, actually. I would say, when we first started, we were like, hey, let's do a postpartum retreat because that's what I felt like that the society needed, and that's what we wanted, even though my background was in software and operations. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And then we pivoted it to in-home because as soon as I knew that was not the right, like that's our society norms did not catch up to it yet, right? And the zeitgeist
Compared to like Asian countries where that's a very normal thing, right?
Yep, exactly. Compared to Asian countries where it's so normal. And even European countries. There are a lot of countries in Europe that like Denmark, like what I just alluded to. And our customers had actually, the ones that stayed at the retreat actually asked us for in-home care. So a lot of them are like, hey, can you, like we loved working with so-and-so and can you continue to provide continuity of care? And we're like, absolutely. Why would we not extend? And then I just realized the more parents that we talk to, there's just such a gap in this area.
Yeah.
So now think about us like ZocDoc, but for perinatal care, or Uber for perinatal care, right?
I think it's a sign of a good entrepreneur where you can listen to what people are saying and what they want and shift it. And also, even though it's a great product and it would be very beneficial for everyone, if the culture isn't quite there yet, that's good to shift. So speaking of kind of business strategies and shifting, your article had kind of mentioned that you were initially starting out with more of an affluent audience. And I know some other companies do that. They launch a brand new product and they specifically target kind of high-end luxury clients. What kind of talk to me a little bit behind why that was a strategy and how that's sort of shifted?
When we first started, we were like, how do we make the unit economics work? It wasn't that we, maybe like our ICP, our initial customer profile was that. We're like, hey, like we start from the affluent and then we work downwards. And then we realized it was a scale problem, right? And like, how do we ensure that we build something that is lasting, that has a network effect, but that also is solving a similar problem? And I think that is when we shifted our model. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, before I move on, was there anything that you wish was in the article that GeekWire published?
Yeah, I think just the why. I think as I shared, I feel like we're not just building a company, we're building a movement. We're at this like tip of the spear right now for postpartum care. I think a lot of people don't think about it. And then I have moms, I talk to hundreds of moms, and a lot of times they're like, why doesn't this exist? And I think people are starting to realize that. And it's very difficult to start a movement and to be at the beginning of a wave. So I think that's the one thing that's missing. I do think that more moms and more families and just new parents should talk about it. Like, what is the plan after birth? You usually have a birth plan, but do you have a postpartum plan? Do you have a plan after the baby comes out, right? Because that is enduring. Because you spend maybe 24, 48 hours giving birth, but postpartum is a year, 2 years. What's your plan?
Yeah. I lied. I do have one more question on this. So the article talks about your military background. Is there anything from the military that you use in your work world today?
So the military, I think one thing is the only constant is change, right? And you have to evolve with it. And I think that is what I brought to my startup and my company. And then the second thing is just grit.
Yeah.
Like that's why it's called the startup grind, right? You have to grind, and you can't just live a comfortable lifestyle and like be like, okay, I'm going to make $1 billion. I'm going to exit at $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
It's a grind, and you have to plant a lot of seeds, and you don't know which seed is going to grow. I think for me, the military taught me that. Amazon taught me just really a lot of business acumen. I think you called out earlier, like just being able to pivot and, listening to the customers, understanding what the inputs, what the inputs of a problem is, and then like looking at the outputs, like what are the consequences that leads to it. Yeah.
And also, we were just talking before we recorded, you said being in the military has made you like really direct too. Or it can make you direct. Yeah.
Oh, very direct.
I like it. I'm like, let's get down to business. Let's do this. All right. So our next article is about what research cuts can mean to us. So this is a Formidable article. And this is a little bit more of a national article, but obviously has an effect to everyone, including people here in Seattle. So federal funding for scientific research is drying up with the new Trump administration. Layoffs have already hit the National Institutes of Health, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, National Science Foundation, and a few more that were listed in the article. Groups are losing hundreds of millions in grants. I actually know two people that both of these things have specifically impacted. I have a friend who works at a scientific research program, and that's going to be going away. And I have a friend who was about to get a grant and had a lot of struggles because she's a woman-owned business. So this hits close to home for me. Economists say that with every dollar, they're saying it's a good thing to invest in scientific research. I can't even believe I'm explaining this. But with every dollar invested, it returns about $5 in economic gains. And then obviously we're living longer lives. What we're currently at now as of recording is that a federal judge had temporarily blocked some of these cuts to scientific research. And also Europeans are recruiting American scientists over there. So I wanted to bring this in. Well, first of all, do you have initial feelings on this? Because I wanted to talk about research, and obviously, like, there's a lot of research involved in your world.
Yeah, I like starting this company. I didn't think that it was gonna be political.
Yeah,
but inherently, women's health somehow is political. And, we are one of those companies that you kind of alluded to. We were impacted by an SBIR grant that did not come to fruition, both through the National Science Foundation as well as the National Institute of Health. And it's devastating. I mean, we're in a maternal health crisis, and research is part of our roadmap, right? Cutting it means more preventable death, more trauma, and more inequity. 85% of moms experience perinatal mood anxiety disorder.
85, that's a lot. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The U.S. has the highest maternal mortality rate in a developed country. And the recovery journey often gets no attention, especially for BIPOC and underserved communities, right? And it is so difficult because it's beyond just the physical recovery. It's the impact of isolation, the economic costs of untreated postpartum depression, and long-term maternal health outcomes, and the impact on children and the kids that the kids that are part of that family. Mm-hmm. I would call it a generational health issue.
Yeah.
And so this is very personal for me, and it's very unfortunate that we're in this position.
Are there any other stats or research that has kind of impacted your work?
I wish there were more research, right?
Yeah, tell me about that. What do you wish was studied more? Just in general postpartum, or is there something specific?
Yeah, there's so much. There's so much more. I mean, I'm actually very curious the impact of postpartum depression and anxiety on men, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what is the impact for non-birthing parents, and like, what is their emotional and mental health like, right? So I'm not just saying like, hey, this is a women's health issue, and women's health should not be niche. 51% of the population are women, right? And I think just generally, it's funny because I actually spoke at an event last night, and I was like, I started off the conversation with, I'm about to talk about an issue that impacts everyone, right? And there were a lot of men in the room, and I was like, who has a mother in here? Mm-hmm. Everybody should be raising their hands, right? Everyone has a mother. Mm-hmm. And so why is this not a more broad issue than just a niche issue that's women's health?
Yeah. And even, I don't have kids, but I have a lot of people in my world. My sister has kids. A lot of my friends have kids, and I don't want them to be struggling. I want to know what they're going through and how I can help. So I totally agree with that. Anything else you want to say on this one about research?
Just that we need more of it.
Yeah.
Companies like mine would love to partner with researchers. So if you're listening out there and would love to partner on this topic, please reach out. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was reading that article, I was like, are we in the upside down? Like, why are we cutting research? Anyway, I can't spiral. All right. Our next one is about Mark Cuban, Shark Tank, Mark Cuban, billionaire. So he is backing a Seattle startup, and it's it is TikTok-esque. It's a TikTok competitor. TikTok has a deadline of April 5th to either sell or they're going to face a ban from the US. So it's called Skylight Social, and they raised money from both Mark Cuban and a Seattle-based firm, Graham & Walker, led by Leslie Feinzag. Do you know her?
I do.
She's a badass in Seattle.
Definitely.
So I love that she supported this. Skylight Social sounded familiar to me because I was thinking about Blue Sky. So they're not the same, but Blue Sky is a competitor for like Twitter and X. But they're both built on the same what's called AT protocol, which lets users own their own data. So you're free to like take all of your videos and your content to another AT protocol based service. And that's kind of what sets them apart, is that you own all of your data and all of your content. Why this affects Seattle, I mean, obviously it affects a lot of us, but TikTok has about 1,200 employees, or about 20% of its workforce is based in Bellevue. So some people may not know that. What came out after I sent you these articles is that Amazon placed a bid to acquire TikTok, and Oracle also put a bid in to potentially acquire them. And I heard the CEO of Oracle is close with Trump. But anyway, the big article that was coming out was about Skylight getting this money, having a competitor to TikTok, what's going to happen with them, blah, blah, blah. So any initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think first it's exciting, like to have a high profile investor shine a light on the Seattle ecosystem, which is really exciting. It helps normalize funding non-traditional founders as well as non-traditional ecosystems, right? Like it's not just the Bay Area or Silicon Valley or New York City or LA, right? Like Seattle, we do have we have a ton of talent. And so that's really exciting to see.
Totally. So I want to talk about investments because, as I mentioned in your intro, you are an angel investor yourself. You are on a board. How did you get involved with that? And kind of what have you learned from your experience in investment?
Yeah. You know, I think like many people saw the stats that only like less than 2% of women get venture funding. And when I was working my W-2 job, I was like, how can I get involved? And I think I'm just like an intellectually curious person. I love looking at pitch decks. I love understanding business models. I mean, leadership, all of those things. And, you know, one day maybe I can be a Leslie, right? And I think fundamentally I'm very curious about what innovation is happening, but also just supporting underrepresented founders. You know, I'll highlight a company that I invested in, local Seattle founder, Estelle from Trellis Health. They are creating direct-to-consumer EHR system, electronic health record system, and starting with women's health. How cool would it be if you had your own health record and you had autonomy of it, right? I mean,
I would love that because every time I go in, they're like, when did you get your IUD? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't you have it? Like, do I have to go through my Instagram and find the picture that I posted after? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't know.
Right. And so I mean, like, you know, it is when you invest, you know, as an angel investor, you're just like, all right, like I'll never see that money again. But, you know.
Yeah, that must be scary.
But I want to give her, I want to give underrepresented founders like myself, like Estelle, a shot at trying to beat the Goliath. And like, there's a lot of incumbents, especially in healthcare specifically. It's an uphill battle. A lot of systems are just plain Excel or paper and pen. And there's so much latency. It's just an upward battle. But if not me, then who? Yeah. Right. And I think you have to take that mentality. Otherwise, what world are we building for our children?
Absolutely. I'm so grateful that you're involved in these conversations. When people are pitching you, I know we have a lot of people listening that are maybe wanting to start a company. What are some things that you think people do really well when pitching you to invest? And what are some things like maybe mistakes that people make? Or is there anything that kind of stands out to you when hearing these pitches or reading these decks?
Yeah. I mean, you'll hear a lot of VCs talk about founder market fit.
Founder market fit.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So it means like having that founder that has the background, the experience, and then similar market to, like, for example, if you have been a product manager at Stripe, and if you want to start a fintech company, and that is similar, that has a wedge that is different than Stripe, but similar, right? And you can win that market. That's for early investing. That's kind of, you know, what you're looking for. I think for me specifically, it's about grittiness of that individual, of that founder. Can they move? Can they pivot? Can they adapt? And can they just like hunker down and get down to, business. It's not easy. That's why it's called the startup grind.
It's truly. What was it like getting funding for your own company, or did you get VC funds, or how did you raise money?
Yeah, we raised a small friends and family round. I would say mostly angels and coworkers and bosses that believed in the mission. Some of my classmates from business school. I would say just folks that really understand the acute pain of becoming a new parent. I actually just got a text message from a couple of friends that I interviewed for a customer discovery for this new pivot. I got a text message and she was like, "Thank you for doing this. I just had my baby. I did not realize how hard postpartum was. I have a much more profound respect for you for doing this. So thank you for doing this." And before she was like, I remember talking to her, she's like, "Oh, I got this. This is all good. Like we're smart people." They're very smart, talented people, right? Tech company executives. And, afterwards hearing that, like, not that I want them to suffer, but just, my husband was a special operations military guy, and he diffused bombs for a living.
Wow.
And then he became an investment banker, and then he made his way into tech again, and like self-taught engineer. And he struggled, and I struggled. We both went to the academies. He went to Naval Academy. I went to West Point. It's funny. We were in our PEPS group, and the dads were like, "Oh man, the guy that diffused bombs is suffering. It's okay." Like,
it's so validating though to be like, okay, if they're struggling, like, this makes me feel better about me also struggling, for sure.
I mean, we got hazed for a living, so
yeah. Oh, exactly. It just speaks to the importance of this work. Absolutely. Okay. Anything else about investments that you want to share?
More women should deploy capital. I would love to see the McKenzies and the Melinda.
Yeah. Well, she does some, but yeah.
She does. But, candidly speaking, I think there's a lot of philanthropy, right? But there's a lot of interesting venture-backed styled companies founded by women founders that deserve the same kind of funding. And that has a very similar nonprofit mission or vision, right?
Yeah.
And so I really encourage the women that can't, I think you just have to be an accredited investor. You don't have, you can give, don't give 1,000, but like, $5,000, like whatever within your means to write a small check, right? It doesn't mean that you have to write $100,000 check.
Yeah.
I think there is a difference between philanthropy and supporting a business. I wish more women would do it. A lot of women just are scared to do it. So I would love to see more women to be able to, don't just invest in companies, but join as limited partners at venture, like women founded microfund. There's a couple of really great ones in Seattle, Yoko and Minda with First Row Partners. I think it's just really important to support other women in that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a good reminder that oftentimes people think they need to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest, but it can start as low as 5,000 or, depending
or even less.
Yeah,
actually.
It could be. Yeah.
You can do it through Angel List, and it's sometimes they collectively they do a $1,000 check, right? And I think it's just getting into practice and understanding how to do those things.
Yeah. That's great. All right, we're moving on to our last article, which is about 2 strategic alliances. So the first one's between Fifth Avenue Theater and Seattle Theater Group. This is going to be a little confusing with the names because they are so similar. But they formed an alliance, so STG, Seattle Theater Group, is taking over the lease of the downtown theater space, which is owned by University of Washington. STG will present arts programming in cooperation with the musical theater. So typically they were doing about like 6 or 7 musicals in that space. Now they're going to do probably about 5, and then STG will come in and add different programming in the theater. This is going to start in late 2025, early 2026. And part of why this happened is that Fifth Avenue Theater was operating at a budget close to about $30 million, and they ended last year with a few $1 million in deficit. So they're having a hard time. Ish. And then STG, by contrast, is operating at a budget of about $80 million, and they finished with a couple $1 million surplus. So this all makes a lot of sense to partner. Will there be layoffs? I know that's often a question when two companies partner. It's too soon to tell, says the article. One fun fact I want to share from this one is they were saying that the Fifth estimates that each person that attends a production spends an average of $41 downtown, which I was like, I'm not the average because I paid a lot more when I went down to my show because I was doing dinner and drinks and park and whatever, Ubering. Anyway, so if the whole theater is full, then that will result in about $77,000 in spending downtown, which again, I feel like could be more. But anyway, so that is one partnership. The other partnership is between the Seattle Center and Pacific Science Center. So Pacific Science Center I think, is more of the one that was struggling a little bit. They have infrastructure that they need to upgrade, and their Seattle Center also has some stuff they want to upgrade, but they are combining. Pacific Science Center is an independent nonprofit. The Seattle Center is a city department that manages that whole campus. Their first task is going to be removing those gates and kiosks and kind of making sure that Pac Science Center is fully incorporated into the campus. And then they're making a 10-year plan to make improvements to both places. The last, again, another fun fact on this one is that both Seattle Center and Pacific Science Center were created in 1962 for the World's Fair. Did you know that? I did not know that.
I did not know
I feel like so many things were created for the World's Fair. I lived in San Diego, and Balboa Park. A lot of that was created for the World's Fair. I think, the Space Needle was World's Fair. I mean, should we have another one? I feel like we should. Okay, yeah, two big alliances. Anything that I missed from those articles that stood out to you?
No, I mean, I love it. I think...
Good ideas, you think?
Collaboration beats competition.
Collaboration beats competition. I love that.
Yeah. I think there's so much – competition has its place, right? I think competition sharpens who you are as a business and how you operate and how you execute. I love competition. I welcome competition because it makes me a better competitor. I feel like I'm
not surprised by that, knowing what I know. I also love it, but yeah, keep going.
I love it. But I think partnerships and collaboration has its place too. I think in healthcare, we need more of this mindset, like shared resources for shared impacts. I think that is so important.
Yeah, let's talk about partnerships for Yuzi Care. Are there people you're going after that you want to partner with? What do you kind of see for Yuzi Care? How would you have any kind of, what kind of alliances would you want to form?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. So many. Yeah. We would love to partner with hospital systems, right? Like I know Swedish has their doula program. We would love to partner with them to help them streamline their customer experience from a customer listing perspective, as well as a doula experience perspective, right? Like how do we bring this more to the other hospital system like Virginia Mason, et cetera? Third-party payers like health insurance company, United Healthcare, those types, Blue Shield, Blue Cross. And then I think the third partner is employee benefits.
Okay. Yeah.
So companies that either brokers or kind of benefits companies, like Care Fertility, right? Like we can easily partner because they own part of the value chain and we can provide additional experiences for the end users.
These are like when, some of those big companies, Amazon, Google, when you go to work there, I know that some of their benefits include they'll pay for freezing your eggs or, IVF, like some of the stuff that a lot of the smaller companies can't. So you basically want to be like, hey, and also we'll pay for your postpartum care through Yuzi Care. Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
Right. I mean, 10 years ago, no companies covered fertility care.
I know. I have seen that shift. So do you feel like postpartum care is kind of on the heels and going through the same trajectories maybe fertility care?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we're at the spearhead and we are just at the tip of the spear right now. Mm-hmm. People, I talk to mothers every day. Some call me in the hospital room. Like we might have engaged them at one point of the funnel, like customer funnel. And then they were like, oh, I think we got this. And then, they call us in a panic and we're like, I can't fabricate humans for you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's until AI and robots really kind of merge and we don't have the capacity to entertain that velocity, right? For us, I would love to just kind of like build that as the part of the norm. So we're just at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. So one more question on the alliances and mergers and things like that. Is your goal to eventually be bought? Would you want to eventually be acquired by another company? Private equity, anything?
Last year at my launch party, I delivered a speech to our investors and our partners and like folks that have supported us along the way that I said, if a salad company can go public, I think a women's health company can as well.
Yeah.
I like to aim high, but I don't have an oracle and a crystal ball. I would love to, get as much fuel for our fire as much as possible, because I think this is something that is not just good for your wallet, it's good for the growth of humanity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, salad company can do it. We can do it too.
Yeah, totally. And I don't know. Acquisition is a very likely thing, right? As we build, I think you can't not think about that, because as a founder, I'm constantly thinking about burn rate and what does that look like? Are we going to be able to, like, what does our round look like? Our next round look like? And so we need the fuel to be able to continue. But my dream is to become a public company. I mean, I don't know if you know Hinge Health in the digital health space. They do digital health for MSK, muscular skeletal pain management. So they do a lot of pelvic floor and other type of pain management resources. And they just filed for IPO.
Wow.
I think they ran for about 10 years. Yeah.
It's possible. It's doable.
It is possible. And, I think a lot of people were naysayers at the beginning that were like, hey, I don't think you can digitize physical therapy, right? And there's a human element to it. But I think that's the difference between an entrepreneur and others.
You have to be kind of crazy.
A little bit. I mean, but you
could dream big and be like, what if?
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. And I write a blog on my LinkedIn called The Pragmatic Idealist.
Okay.
I think you have to have a sense of pragmatism, but you can't not have idealism. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't be like, oh, nothing can be done. Then you probably should not be a founder.
Yeah.
And you if you don't think of the world if you cannot have a vision statement of what the world looks like with your company in a positive way, then maybe that's not the path that you should take. Yeah.
Pragmatic idealism. I think that's a good thing to stick with. So the last question, I've been toying around different ending questions, and so I'm going to try a new one, which is, what's an action item that you want the audience to do? What's a to-do item? Give our audience a little bit of homework. I know one of them was invest more in women's companies, so we've said that, but there's anything you want people to go home and do today or think about? Yeah.
I would also say just ask the questions for new moms and new dads. And don't just give them advice about, like, hey, these days are going to go by so quickly, enjoy the days, but actually do something actionable for them, like bring them a home cooked meal, take their baby. If you can't do those things, book a service like through Yuzi Care to do those things, right? And I think a lot of times we're just like, we don't need any more consumerism on plastic junk on toys. Babies don't even use half of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to really ask the folks around us that this is the most difficult challenge, right? Like, transition that you might have. I don't know if you know this, but I can talk about postpartum all day long, but it's the biggest hormonal drop that you'll ever experience in your life.
I did not know that.
More than menopause, more than anything else. And we don't study it.
Right.
We should know more, but we don't
research,
study it. That was the one study that came out back in the 80s, and that's it.
Wow.
Right? And so not that many people know about it. Mm-hmm. I think the third ask is, don't think about women's health as women's health. It is a generational health. If women is healthy, everyone has a mom. If a woman is healthy, then the whole family as a unit is healthy, because in the military, we used to say you're only as strong as your weakest link. Mm-hmm. And if that mom is not strong, if that mom is not there and can't show up, then
the family unit suffers.
The family unit will not function as well.
Wise words, Stephiney. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I want to shout out again to the Inn at the WAC, Washington Athletic Club. We're so cozy here. I love it. We're sitting on the couch in the living room of this suite. Again, Noura, thank you for letting us use this space. And then again, thank you to Formidable for being the sponsor of this week's episode. Thank you for sitting down with me, Stephiney.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
This has been The Weekly, with production assistance from Nick Patry. If you liked what you heard, rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at info@theweeklyseattle.com. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We'll see you next time.